The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking the quiet rhythm of a house that had grown too used to silence. Evan sat by the window, the warm glow of the street lamps spilling across his face. Outside, the rain came down in gentle waves, painting streaks of gold against the glass. Inside, everything felt stilled too still. He had grown familiar with evenings like this, soft music playing somewhere in the background. The hum of the refrigerator and the faint creak of the wooden floor. It was the kind of silence that didn't hurt, but it never felt whole either. It was the silence of two people who loved each other deeply, but carried different kinds of loneliness. His mother, Laura, was still at the birthday party of an old friend, someone she hadn't seen in years. When she had left earlier that evening, she had looked radiant in a blue dress, her hair tied softly, her smile genuine but slightly distant, like it belonged to another time. "You'll be fine on your own, won't you?" she'd asked before leaving. "Always am." Evan had replied with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. That had been hours ago now. As the rain deepened, he couldn't help but wonder what memories that party had stirred for her. Lately, she'd been quieter, often staring out of windows longer than she used to, holding her cup of tea as if it were an anchor. Evan noticed these things. He noticed everything. He knew his mother was strong. She had to be. After his father passed, it had just been the two of them. She had rebuilt their lives piece by piece, paying bills, keeping smiles, pretending not to miss what was gone. But even strength, he'd learned, can get lonely when it's all you have. He got up and walked into the living room. On the mantel sat a framed photo of his parents on their wedding day. His mother's smile in the picture was brighter than he'd ever seen it in real life, full of youth, laughter, and a kind of hope that only people deeply in love could hold. He'd always wondered what it was like for her to lose that. Sometimes he wanted to ask, but every time he tried, the words felt too heavy. He sat on the couch and watched the rain slide down the window like tears tracing a memory. Somewhere in that sound he found both comfort and sadness. He didn't know why. But that night felt different. Then came the sound of a car pulling up. Evan turned his head toward the window, his heart picking up speed. Headlights cut through the rain for a moment before disappearing. The front door opened softly, and there she was, Lori, still beautiful in that gentle, timeless way. Her dress now damp around the edges, her cheeks touched by the cold. She paused in the doorway as if unsure whether to step fully inside. Something in her expression had changed. Her eyes carried the shimmer of something fragile, something stirred up by the night she'd just lived. "Hey, Mom," Evan said quietly. Her voice came out softer than usual. "Hey, sweetheart, you're still up?" He smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep. The rain's kinda loud." She nodded, setting her purse on the table and slipping off her shoes. "It's funny," she said. "It wasn't raining when I left." There was a pause, long, gentle, uncertain. The kind that holds a secret inside it. Evan watched her as she removed her earrings, her hands trembling slightly. Something was on her mind. He could feel it. "Did you have fun?" he asked. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hides more than it shows. "It was nice," she said softly. "Different. Strange, even." He tilted his head. "Strange how?" Laura didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked toward the window and looked outside, watching the rain like it carried her thoughts away with it. "Do you ever wonder," she began, her voice distant, "what would have happened if life took you somewhere else? If one small choice could have changed everything?" Evan didn't know what to say. His mother rarely spoke like this. She had always been steady, practical, the type to look forward rather than back. Hearing her sound so wistful startled him. "Maybe," he said finally. "But I guess you never really know, right?" She nodded. "Yes. But sometimes you still feel it. The ache of something unfinished." Her reflection in the window looked younger, somehow like she was staring at her past through the rain. Evan leaned forward. "Did something happen tonight?" Laura turned to him then, her eyes softer, glassy with emotion. "I saw someone I hadn't seen in over 20 years, she whispered. "Someone I never thought I'd see again." The way she said it made the room feel smaller, the air heavier. Evan felt curiosity rise inside him, but also something else, a quiet fear that this night was about to reveal something that had been buried for too long. Who? He asked gently. Laura hesitated. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled faintly, shaking her head as if the memory was both sweet and painful. Someone who used to know me better than anyone, she said. Outside, thunder rumbled low like a heartbeat beneath the rain. Evan didn't press further. He could sense she wasn't ready to say more, not yet. But deep down, he knew this conversation wasn't over. Something had shifted, and whatever it was, it wouldn't stay silent for long. Laura walked toward the kitchen, her movements slow, her thoughts far away. She poured herself a glass of water and stood there for a while. Staring at nothing in particular, Evan watched her from the couch, realizing that sometimes the people we think we know best carry whole worlds we've never seen. And that night, as the rain continued to fall and the clock ticked softly in the dark, he knew one thing for certain. His mother hadn't just come back from a birthday party. She had come back from her past, and whatever story lived in that past was about to change both of their lives. The morning after the party, the house was quiet again. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a world washed clean, fresh, and still glistening under soft sunlight. Evan woke to the faint sound of his mother in the kitchen, dishes clinking gently, coffee brewing, a rhythm that had always been part of his mornings growing up. For a moment, everything felt normal. But then he remembered her words from the night before, "Someone I never thought I'd see again." That sentence had followed him into his dreams. Stirring a curiosity he couldn't shake, when he entered the kitchen, Laura was standing near the window, coffee mug in hand, staring out into the garden. She didn't notice him right away. Her gaze seemed fixed somewhere far beyond the present. "Morning," he said softly. She turned, smiling faintly. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep?" "A little," he replied. "You?" Laura let out a quiet laugh. "Not much, I'm afraid." There was a pause. The sunlight touched her face, revealing the tiredness beneath her gentle expression. Evan could tell she had been thinking all night. The kind of thinking that wasn't about worry, but about memory. Was it someone important? He asked carefully. Her eyes flickered as if he had reached the thought she'd been avoiding. "Yes," she said after a moment. "Very important." Evan pulled out a chair and sat down. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to," he said quietly. Laura hesitated, then set her coffee cup down. "No, maybe I should. You're old enough to understand now. I suppose it's time I talk about that part of my life." She sat opposite him, folding her hands in front of her, eyes soft with the weight of years gone by. "His name was Daniel," she began. "We met when I was about your age." Evan listened silently as her voice took on that wistful tone, the kind that turns ordinary words into echoes of the heart. "He wasn't like anyone else," she said, smiling faintly. "He had this quiet confidence about him. Not loud or showy, just steady. He used to say the right thing without even trying. We met at a summer job in an old library downtown. I was the girl who organized shelves, and he was the guy who always showed up late, but somehow made everyone laugh." Evan smiled softly, imagining her younger self in that picture. "You liked him?" She laughed lightly. "Oh, I more than liked him. I think in some quiet way, I loved him. But it wasn't dramatic or wild. It was simple, honest. We'd walk home together after work, stop at the bakery on Main Street, share one muffin between us because we were too broke for two. We talked about everything: dreams, books, fears. It was the kind of friendship that felt like home." Her words painted pictures in the air, two young souls walking beneath golden streetlights, holding laughter in the space between them. "What happened?" Evan asked gently. Laura looked down. Her fingers traced the edge of her coffee cup. "Life happened," she said simply. "My parents moved to another city. I tried to keep in touch, but things changed. He started college early. Letters came for a while, but then they stopped. I told myself it wasn't meant to be. But you know how the heart works, it doesn't always agree with reason." She took a slow breath, her eyes distant. Years later, when I met your father, I loved him too differently, but truly. He gave me stability, kindness, a family. But sometimes, on quiet nights like this, I used to wonder about Daniel. Not because I wanted to go back, but because a part of me always wanted to know how he turned out. Whether he was happy, whether he ever thought of me. Evan leaned back, absorbing every word. He had never heard his mother speak this way openly without her usual carefulness. Did seeing him again feel strange? He asked. Laura smiled sadly. It felt like stepping into an old photograph. Everything looked familiar, but time had redrawn the lines. He looked older, of course, but his eyes were the same. We talked for a while, just small things at first. Then he said something that caught me off guard. What did he say? She looked up at Evan, her eyes shimmering. He said, I never stopped wondering what would have happened if we hadn't lost two. The morning sun had begun to warm the kitchen when Laura finally set down her empty coffee cup. Evan had left for a short walk, leaving the house in quiet peace, but her mind was anything but calm. Even in the soft glow of sunlight, her thoughts kept returning to the night before, the fleeting, unspoken connection she had felt when she saw Daniel again. It wasn't as if the past had truly returned. It was only a moment, a brief conversation, but moments like that had a way of clinging to the soul. She could still hear his voice, calm and familiar, carrying words she hadn't realized she had longed to hear. Laura walked into the living room, her hand brushing over the photo frames on the mantel. One picture caught her attention. It was of her and Daniel at a summer fair years ago. Young and laughing, holding hands as if the world belonged entirely to them. She hadn't seen that photo in decades. Yet seeing it now felt like a thread connecting yesterday to today. She almost didn't notice Evan coming back in. He had returned from his walk, wet leaves clinging to his shoes, his cheeks flushed from the cold morning air. Hey, he said softly, glancing at her. I brought something. Laura looked up, curious. Evan was holding a small envelope, yellowed and folded neatly. Her heart skipped a beat. I found it in the drawer, he said. I think it's from him. Daniel. Her fingers shook slightly as she took it. She hadn't expected to see the familiar handwriting again. She could hardly remember the words that might be inside. Yet the envelope itself carried a weight of years of laughter, longing, and unspoken feelings. Evan. She whispered, but he only smiled gently, stepping back to give her space. Laura sat down on the couch, her back straight, the envelope resting on her knees. She hesitated, taking a deep breath. Then she carefully opened it, pulling out a folded letter. The paper was worn at the edges, but the ink was still crisp. As she read, a strange mix of emotions swirled through her. Each line was deliberate, yet tender, filled with memories she hadn't dared revisit. Daniel had written about the days they had spent together, about the laughter and small adventures they had shared, and about the way she had shaped his early years without even knowing it. He had also written about the choices life had forced them to make, the distances, the different paths, the love they had found elsewhere, but in every word there was an acknowledgement of the bond they had once shared. Laura felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She hadn't realized how deeply she had missed the simplicity of those days, the quiet companionship that had felt like home. And now, decades later, that feeling had returned, not as a temptation to go back, but as a reminder of who she had been and the love she had carried with her all along. Evan watched her, sensing the storm of emotions behind her eyes. It's okay to feel, he said softly. It doesn't change anything. It just reminds you that you've lived fully. Laura nodded, folding the letter and holding it close to her chest. You're right, she murmured. It's strange how one brief encounter can bring everything back to the surface. It's like a small ripple in a pond, and suddenly the water remembers all it ever held. Evan sat down beside her. Do you regret anything? He asked gently. Laura shook her head. No, not regret. Just reflection. I see now that every choice I made led me here, to this life, to this family. And yet, seeing him again reminded me of a part of myself I'd forgotten, the part that dared to hope, to dream, to believe in a kind of love that doesn't always end outside. The wind rustled the trees, a soft symphony of nature that seemed to echo the stirrings of her heart. Laura looked out the window, and for a moment, she saw herself as she had been back then, bright, full of possibilities, unaware of the burdens the future would bring. And in that reflection, she realized that life had given her more than she had ever expected. "It's strange, isn't it?" she said quietly. "How life can bring you moments you didn't even know you were waiting for." Evan smiled, squeezing her hand. "Sometimes the unexpected is the most honest reminder of who we aren't, who we were meant to be." Laura took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced in years. The past had returned, but it wasn't here to disrupt her life. It was here to remind her of her strength, her capacity for love, and the beauty of human connection that endures even through time and distance. For the first time in a long while, she felt a gentle peace settle over her. The letter, the memories, the brief reunion, it wasn't about rekindling what had been lost. It was about honoring it, understanding it, and carrying it forward with gratitude. Evan watched her quietly, realizing that life was full of these small, profound moments that might pass quickly, but left lasting echoes in the heart. Laura looked at him then, her eyes shining, not with sorrow, but with renewed hope. "Thank you for letting me share this with you," she said softly. "It means more than you'll ever know." Evan smiled. "Always, Mom, always." And as they sat together, the sunlight streaming through the window, the world outside seemed a little brighter, a little more alive. The past had come back to touch them, and for the first time in a long time, Laura felt ready to step fully into the present, carrying her memories with her, but no longer held captive by them. The afternoon sun spilled through the living room windows, casting golden light across the worn wooden floors. Laura sat on the couch, the letter from Daniel still in her hands, her gaze fixed somewhere between the past and the present. Evan leaned against the doorway, unsure whether to speak or let the silence continue. Sometimes words were unnecessary. Sometimes the quiet said more than anything could. But tonight, that quiet felt heavy, as though it carried decades of unspoken thoughts and feelings. Laura finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "You know, Evan, there are some things we carry inside us even when life goes on. Memories, regrets, hopes. They live quietly, tucked away where no one else can reach them." Evan stepped closer. "Like things you never told anyone?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Yes, things I thought I might forget, or maybe things I thought I shouldn't say. But the truth is, the heart remembers." He sat down beside her, careful to respect the space between them. The rain from the previous night had left the garden sparkling, and the soft light made the living room feel almost magically ordinary place transformed by the weight of emotions. "What kind of things?" Evan asked, curiosity and empathy mixed in his tone. Laura hesitated, fingers tightening around the folded letter. "Love," she whispered. "Love that didn't have the chance to grow fully. Love that was paused by time and circumstance. Love that remained unspoken." Evan swallowed. He had heard of love before, of course, but this was different. This was a quiet, patient kind of love that didn't demand anything. It existed silently, waiting to be acknowledged. Was it hard? He asked. It was, she admitted. Hard and beautiful at the same time. You think you're living one life, but a part of you, a part of your heart, has already walked another path, one that no one else can see. And then, when fate gives you a glimpse of that path again, you feel the weight of everything you never said. Evan reached for her hand. "Do you wish you had said something?" Laura smiled faintly, a smile tinged with both nostalgia and sadness. "Sometimes, but other times I think the silence was what gave it meaning. Love unspoken can still guide you. It shapes your decisions, your choices, your life, Evan, if you never share it aloud." Evan nodded slowly, understanding the layers of emotion she carried. "I think I get it. It's like, even though it's hidden, it's still real." "Yes," she said softly. "Exactly. Real but quiet. And sometimes That quiet teaches you more about yourself than any words could. The room seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, a soft accompaniment to the emotions filling the space between them. Evan and Laura sat there, together but separated by years, experiences, and emotions too delicate to force into words. "Do you ever regret anything?" Evan asked, voice barely above a whisper. Laura looked at him, her eyes glistening. "Regret is a strange thing," she said. "It only comes when you try to change the past. But the truth is, the past brought me here. It brought me you, it brought me our life. And for that, I can't regret it." Evan smiled, feeling the warmth of her words settle into him. "So the unspoken truth doesn't have to be sad," he said. Laura shook her head gently. "No, not sad. Hopeful, maybe. Because even unspoken, love has the power to guide us, to remind us what matters, to give depth to the present." For a long moment, neither spoke. Evan watched his mother, seeing her not only as the woman who had raised him, but as the person who had carried a lifetime of emotions quietly, gracefully, and with such strength. "I think I understand now," he said softly. "Even if you never said it, it was always there. Part of you, part of who you are." Laura's eyes softened, a small smile forming. "Yes, Evan. And that's the thing about the heart it remembers. It waits, it hopes. And sometimes it speaks in ways words cannot." Outside, the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the garden in shades of amber and gold. Laura folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table beside her, as if laying down a weight she had carried for years. "Thank you for listening," she said quietly. I think it helps to speak even a little, even if it's not to the person it was meant for." Evan squeezed her hand gently. "Anytime, Mom. I'm always here." A soft breeze came through the open window. The evening sky had taken on a soft, amber hue as Laura stepped onto the porch. The garden bathed in the warm glow of sunset. Evan followed her quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. The air smelled faintly of rain-soaked earth and flowers, a scent that always seemed to remind him of calmer, simpler days. Laura cradled her mug in both hands, staring at the horizon. The letter from Daniel still lay on the kitchen table, folded neatly, untouched since this morning. Her mind wandered back to the fleeting moment at the party, the brief conversation, and the rush of emotions she hadn't expected. Evan handed her a mug. "Here," he said softly. "I thought you might like this out here." She smiled faintly, taking a small sip. "Thank you." The warmth of the tea was comforting, but it couldn't quite chase away the swirl of thoughts inside her. They stood side by side for a few moments, listening to the soft rustling of leaves, the distant chirp of a bird settling in for the night. It was peaceful, yet tension hung in the quiet like the calm before a storm. Laura's fingers trembled slightly around the mug. She had carried these thoughts for years, feelings she hadn't voiced, choices she hadn't explained, a love she had tucked away and never spoken of. But the events of the last 24 hours had stirred something inside her. The unspoken truth demanded acknowledgement, if only to release the weight from her heart. "Evan," she began, her voice tentative. He turned to look at her, attentive, encouraging, patient. She took a deep breath. "I think it's time I told you something. Something I've never really said out loud." Evan felt a flutter of anticipation. "You can tell me anything, Mom," he said quietly. Laura looked down, searching for the right words. "Back when I was your age, I met someone very important. His name was Daniel. We were close, very close. And even though life took us in different directions, even though I built a life that I love, part of me always carried him." Evan didn't interrupt. He could feel the weight of her confession, the decades of silence it carried. "I didn't tell anyone," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "because it wasn't fair. I didn't want to hurt anyone or disrupt the life I had. But I never stopped caring. And I never stopped remembering the small moments, the laughter, the feeling of being truly seen by someone else." She paused, looking out over the garden. "Last night, seeing him again, It brought all of that back. It made me realize that some parts of the heart never fade, no matter how long the years are or how far apart people are. And I realized I've been holding on to these memories not because I wanted to return to them, but because I needed to honor them, to accept that they shaped who I am today. Evan's chest tightened. He could see the honesty in her eyes, the sincerity in her expression. He had never seen her so vulnerable, so human. Mom, he began, unsure how to bridge the emotions swirling between them. Laura turned to him, meeting his gaze. I've been afraid to speak this before, she said. Afraid that saying it aloud would make it real in a way I couldn't control. But holding it inside has been harder than I ever imagined. I wanted you to know. The choices I made, the life I built, and the love I carried both past and present are all part of me. They are not regrets. They are lessons. They are memories that remind me how deeply we can feel, how strong the heart can be. Tears welled in Evan's eyes. I understand, he said. You've been brave all these years, holding everything together for us. And still, you've allowed yourself to feel even when it's hard. That's incredible. Laura smiled faintly through her own tears. Sometimes bravery isn't just about facing the world, it's about facing yourself, your heart, and the feelings you thought you could never confront. Evan reached for her hand, holding it gently. Thank you for sharing this with me. I feel like I understand you in a way I never have before, and I'm proud of you. Proud that you can be honest with yourself and with me. She squeezed his hand in return, feeling a quiet release. For years, she had carried the weight of unspoken emotions. Tonight, speaking them aloud, sharing them with her son, lifted a part of that burden. She felt lighter, freer, and closer to him than ever before. Laura took a deep breath, glancing toward the sunset. You know, Evan, it's strange. Some moments in life come along unexpectedly. They remind us of what really matters, the people we love and the feelings we can't ignore. Sometimes it takes decades for the heart to speak clearly. But when it does, it's powerful. Evan nodded, feeling the truth in her words. It is, he agreed softly. And I think it's also a reminder that even unspoken things have meaning, that even quiet feelings shape who we are and who we can be. Laura leaned back, looking at him with gratitude and relief. Exactly. And sharing this with you. It makes me realize that the heart doesn't always need closure from the past. Sometimes it just needs to be acknowledged, to be heard. And now it has been. For the first time in years, Laura felt a profound sense of peace. The unspoken truths had been spoken. The past had been acknowledged and the present embraced. And in that quiet moment, mother and son shared a deep, unbreakable connection, one built on love, honesty, and understanding. The sky outside deepened into shades of orange and purple. The last light of day reflecting on the calm faces of two people who had finally faced the truth. And as they sat together on the porch, hands intertwined, Laura realized that speaking her heart had not changed her life. It had enriched it, filling the space between past and present with clarity, love, and hope. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the curtains, painting the living room with a soft, golden glow. The quiet hum of the house felt different, this time lighter, more peaceful, as if the weight of unspoken words had finally been lifted. Laura sat in her favorite armchair, holding her mug of tea. Eyes focused on the garden that had grown quiet and serene after the rain. Evan entered quietly, carrying a small notebook he had been writing in. He paused at the doorway, taking in the calm of the moment. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," Laura replied, smiling. The corners of her eyes crinkled in a warmth that hadn't been there before, a subtle glow that spoke of relief and clarity. Evan walked over and sat beside her, holding the notebook gently. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you told me last night, about unspoken feelings, about the past, and how it shapes the present." Laura nodded, tracing the rim of her mug with her finger. Sometimes it's hard to realize that the heart keeps track of so many moments, even those we think are long gone. But speaking the truth, even softly, can make all the difference. Evan opened the notebook to a page he had written on earlier that morning. I tried to put it into words, just what I think. About life, about love, about people who matter to us. Laura leaned in, curious. As she read, she felt a lump in her throat. Evan's words were simple, yet profoundly touching. They spoke of hope, connection, and the invisible threads that hold people together across time and distance. "Evan," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly, "this is beautiful. You've captured something that even I couldn't say as clearly. You've understood." He smiled a little shyly. "I think I'm starting to understand. That love isn't always about holding on or getting closure. Sometimes it's about appreciating what it teaches us and letting it make us stronger." Laura nodded, her eyes misty with emotion. "Yes, and it's not only about love for someone else. It's about the love that teaches us compassion, patience, and resilience. About the moments we carry with us and the people who help shape who we become." They sat together in silence for a while, the sunlight spilling across the room like a soft embrace. Outside, the garden glimmered with dew, every leaf catching the light. Birds chirped in the distance, celebrating the morning in their own quiet way. Laura finally stood, folding her mug and placing it on the table. I think I'm ready to move forward, truly. The past will always be a part of me. Yes, but it no longer weighs me down, and I can let the future, whatever it holds, feel hopeful again." Evan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm proud of you, Mom, for speaking your truth and for letting yourself feel it fully. And I'm glad I was here to share it with you." She looked at him, her eyes soft, proud, and full of love. "You've grown so much, Evan. Not just in age, but in understanding. I see the way you carry your heart, how carefully and bravely you allow yourself to feel. And I'm grateful that we can share these moments together." The two of them stepped outside onto the porch, the fresh morning air filling their lungs. The sun was higher now, brightening the garden, highlighting the new blooms and the tiny puddles left by the previous night's rain. Everything looked renewed, vibrant, alive. Laura took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. "You know," she said softly, "life has a way of reminding us that even when love is hidden, or our memories are long past, it still shapes who we are. And it can guide us in the present if we allow it." Evan nodded. "And it reminds us to cherish what we have now without holding regret, to see beauty in ordinary moments and to appreciate the people who matter most." Laura smiled, eyes shining with gratitude and hope. "Exactly. And right now, I feel that way grateful for the past, but even more grateful for today, for this, for you." He smiled back, feeling the warmth of the words sink into his chest. For a long moment, they simply stood there, hands intertwined, taking in the garden, the sunlight, and the quiet magic.